Your mother walks with a limp. The words hit me strange. I let out a small, dismissive laugh. Father Whitman looked up at me, and for a second, his eyes felt like they were reading straight through every year I'd ever lived. You're laughing. His voice dropped, heavy with something between pity and warning. Son, you've been blind to something your whole life. That girl in the yellow dress with the red ribbon. The one who used to follow you around. You don't even know who she is, do you? She can't speak. Every feeling you've ever had, every fear, every lonely afternoon, she's been there for all of it. Since you were a child, she never left you. Something in my chest caved in, and just like that, I was back there. The old oak tree behind the sheriff's station, the evidence bags swinging from its branches, the dark, slow water of the creek. Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm LZ, and I hope you're all doing well. Today's story came to me exactly as I'm about to read it to you. I haven't changed a word. There's a particular kind of cold that settles over Perth this time of year. Not brutal, just this thin, quiet chill. Maybe 50 degrees, the kind that makes a place feel like it's holding its breath. It reminds me of another cold, another place, another year. 1998, a dead-end county road outside a small town in rural Georgia, along the banks of a slow brown creek. Some memories don't fade, they just wait. They sit in the back of your skull for 20 years, and then, in some silent parking lot on the other side of the world, they come walking back like they never left. My dad was a state trooper, and troopers get transferred. That year, we landed in a small county seat. I'll just call it Millhaven. Our house sat behind the sheriff's substation. Across the road, an open field, and past that, a stagnant green pond. Behind our place ran a slow, muddy creek. To the left of the house, an abandoned building nobody had touched in years. Boarded windows, kudzu eating the porch. To the right, thick woods, and in those woods stood an old oak tree, its low branches sagging under something I didn't understand yet. Small plastic evidence bags. My dad explained it once, matter of fact, the way cops explain terrible things to kids. Those were clothing items and effects from accident and homicide cases, tagged and stored out back because the substation didn't have proper facilities. When the wind moved through, the bags would lift and rustle against each other, and with them, always, the name of the man who worked there, Nathaniel, the county's part-time gravedigger and morgue assistant. A quiet guy nobody really talked to. There were no kids my age nearby, so that back lot, Nathaniel's lot we called it, became my whole world. Marbles, mud pies, a scuffed-up soccer ball I dragged everywhere. In the evenings we played hide and seek. I was the shy, bookish type, so I ended up it more often than not. One afternoon, I got clever and hid in the thick brush behind the oak, right under where the evidence bags hung. And that's when my heart stopped. On the other side of the brush stood a young woman, 18, maybe 20, wearing something that didn't belong there, a bright yellow dress with a strange red trim, out of place, almost costume-like. She was staring at me without blinking. Terrified, I pressed a finger to my lips. Don't tell anyone I'm here. She didn't move, didn't speak, but there was something in that silent, steady gaze, a kind of trust. Like she understood this was our secret now. After that, I saw her all the time. When my mom was in the kitchen, she'd be standing just past the window, still as a photograph. "Mom, look, someone's out there," I'd say. My mom would snap at me. There's nobody out there in this heat. Don't be ridiculous. Nobody else ever saw her, just me. The worst of it happened on a rainy afternoon. My mom, a neighbor, and a couple of the neighbors' kids took us down to the creek to cool off. I slipped on a mossy rock and went under. The current was stronger than it looked. Water filled my lungs. Everything went dark at the edges, and right before I blacked out, someone grabbed my mother's ankle from underneath the water. She jerked in surprise, and without even realizing what she'd grabbed onto, hauled me up, gasping. "Mom," I choked out. "That girl, she pulled you. She's the one who saved me." Then she went back under. My mom was too deep in conversation with her friend to even hear me. Furious, hurt, I threw my bar of soap into the creek. She swatted me twice across the back with a plastic cup for it. She never understood. That day, it wasn't a person who pulled me out of that creek. It was something else. Something that had loved me quietly for years already. After college, I took my first job and moved into an apartment with an old friend from high school, Marcus. Split a room, split the rent. About 2 months in, he came to me one morning, pale, and said, "I can't live in this room with you anymore. I mean it." When I pushed him for a reason, his voice started shaking. For a few nights now, I've woken up and there's been this shape, pitch black, hovering right over your face while you sleep. First time I figured it was just my eyes adjusting to the dark. But tonight, I got close enough to actually look at it, and it looked back at me. I'm not staying here another night. Marcus moved out that same day. I ended up finding a cheap room in a rundown shared house on the edge of town. The kind of place full of guys just out of college. Nobody staying long. But from the moment I stepped inside, something felt wrong in a way I couldn't name. It started small. The bathroom door would lock itself from the outside while someone was in there. A bucket would show up outside the door, and nobody in the house would own up to putting it there. Late at night, thudding against the walls, like someone kicking from the other side. Light switches flipping on and off with nobody near them. One of the older guys in the house, a blunt, foul-mouthed type, was out on the porch one night, ranting about this haunted dump in the ugliest language he could manage. Mid-sentence, the wooden porch chair, heavy, solid, lifted clean off the ground and slammed down inches from him. He never finished that sentence. Not long after, we started finding little piles of sand in the corners of rooms, the kind of thing a kid builds on a beach. And the worst part was the water. We'd come home from work to find the entire floor of the house soaked, wet footprints and drag marks running from the bathroom through every room, like someone had walked the length of the house, wringing out sopping clothes as they went. One Thursday, it came to a head. We were all downstairs at the diner across the street. On the way back from the grocery store, I told the youngest guy in the house to go on ahead and start rinsing the vegetables for dinner. 10 minutes later, he called. His voice was cracking, half crying. "Dale, get back here now. Everything's destroyed." We ran back. What we found wasn't something a sane mind could have pictured beforehand. It looked like something had chewed the room up and spat it back out. Rice and flour thrown across every surface. The fridge emptied and its contents smeared floor to ceiling. Cooking oil streaked across the walls in long, violent arcs. Whatever relief we'd felt about finding a cheap place vanished in an instant. Out of options, we drove out to see a man everybody in town just called Pastor Elias. Half preacher, half something older than that. The kind of man small towns keep around for exactly this reason. He heard us out after Sunday service and told us to come back that evening. When we sat down with him that evening, Pastor Elias closed his eyes for a long moment, breathing slow, like he was listening to something none of us could hear. Then he sighed. There's a mother and her boy living in that house. The boy's restless, plays in the dirt, builds things out of sand. And you all aren't exactly innocent either, dumping water in that bathroom, cursing at them. One of the guys cut in. But Pastor, the whole floor gets flooded. That's not something a person should have to live with. He answered calm, even. The mother can't stand on her own two legs. She's crippled. So when she drags herself out of that bathroom, water runs off her clothes the whole way through the house. Your mother walks with a limp. The word hit me strange. I let out a small laugh. I couldn't quite hold back. Come on, is that even possible? Pastor Elias looked up at me, and in that moment, his eyes felt like they were reading straight through every year I'd ever lived. His voice dropped low, somewhere between pity and warning. You're laughing. Son, you've been blind to something your whole life. That girl in the yellow dress with the red trim, the one who used to follow you around. You don't even know who she is. She can't speak. Every feeling you've ever had, every fear, every lonely afternoon, she's been there for it. Since you were a boy, she never left you. My chest caved in. It felt like lightning had split the world. I thought I understood straight down the middle. I was back at that old oak tree, the evidence bags swaying in the wind, the dark water of the creek closing over my head. Of course, it was her. I'd seen her my whole life. We'd had, in some way I couldn't explain to anyone, a whole relationship made of silence. 2 seconds of eye contact with her carried the weight of an hour-long conversation neither of us ever spoke aloud. She'd lodged herself somewhere in my head permanently. She wasn't a person. She was something caught in those woods behind the old oak. Some restless, voiceless thing that had become the only real companion of a lonely childhood and had stayed close as a shadow ever since. The air in the room went thick and cold. A chill ran straight down my spine. The other guys in the house were staring at me, mouths open, but all I could hear was a kind of ringing silence in my own ears. Pastor Elias paused, turning something over in his hands. Then he said, "Listen, the line between this world and the next one is thinner than people like to believe. Some souls, especially the ones who leave this world violently or with something left unfinished, they attach themselves to an innocent child. It happens more than you'd think. That patch of woods behind your childhood house, that was where she died, or where she was buried, or close enough to it that it didn't matter. When you were a boy playing hide and seek, hiding out there, your own loneliness left a door open. You weren't afraid of her. You put a finger to your lips and told her to keep your secret. That was all it took. One gesture, and she made herself your shadow. She never hurt you. That day at the creek, it was her hand that pulled your mother's ankle and pulled you back up alive. But as you got older, as your world filled up with other people, she stepped back into the dark. She never left though. That black shape your friend Marcus saw hovering over you at night, that wasn't some demon. That was her, standing guard over you while you slept. the way a mother watches a sleeping child? I asked, voice shaking. Then, the house here, the limping mother, the restless kid. Pastor Elias smiled, but there was no humor in it, just something old and sad. That's a different family entirely. A mother and her son. Not people, not exactly, but tied to that house, the same way you're tied to your girl. And when your silent one saw that family harassing you and your roommates, locking doors, leaving buckets, kicking the walls, she couldn't let it stand. That Thursday, while you were at the store, there was a war fought in that room. Your girl in the yellow dress fought that mother and her son alone to keep them from driving you out of that house. What you walked into wasn't vandalism, son. It was a battlefield. She was fighting to protect you. By the time he finished, I couldn't stop the tears. What we'd looked at with horror and disgust had actually been the last stand of the only real friend my childhood ever gave me. I felt sick with guilt. She'd spent years of her existence walking behind me like a shadow, keeping me alive, and I'd spent that whole time afraid of her. Pastor Elias said a few prayers over us and gave us water he'd blessed. Move out of that house, he told us. And Dale, say a prayer for her. She's not something evil. She's just a soul that never got to rest, who fell in love with a human boy who couldn't love her back the same way. Two worlds like that were never meant to meet. She needs to be let go. We moved out within the month. Years went by after that. The grind of city life, the slow churn of a career, the way time just swallows things whole if you let it. And somehow, through all of it, I ended up here, thousands of miles from home, standing in a quiet park in Perth, Australia. No sheriff's substation here. No muddy creek. No evidence bags hanging from an old oak. But when that same thin, quiet cold, maybe 50 degrees, that same particular chill, moves across my skin, something in me still shivers. Like a touch I still recognize. And that's where he ended his story. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, let me know. We stayed in touch by email through most of this, but since he never gave his real name in the story, I won't either. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next one.